My name is Chelsea Davenport. I'm 32 years old. The first time my mother asked me to forgive a $186,000 loan, she did it in a lawyer's conference room with a glass pitcher of water between us and my brother's gym logo, still printed on the folder in front of her. She did not call it theft. She did not call it a breach of trust. She folded her hands over her pearl bracelet, looked at me as if I had made the room uncomfortable by existing in it, and said, "Chelsea, families do not destroy each other over money." My father sat beside her in his navy suit, the one he wore to church funerals and bank appointments. He had a tiny coffee stain on his cuff. I remember that because I kept looking at it while he explained why my inheritance had become my brother's bridge funding. It was temporary, he said. Your brother was building something. We all had to believe in him. Across the table, my brother Ryan leaned back like he was listening to people discuss weather. He still had the thick silver watch he bought when Davenport Strength opened. The gym had been closed for 3 months by then. The sign was gone. The turf had been rolled up. The squat racks had been sold to a CrossFit owner in Franklin for cash. But my money was still missing. My lawyer, Mara Kellerman, sat to my left with a yellow legal pad, a capped pen, and the kind of silence that made louder people nervous. My mother reached across the table and slid a paper toward me. It was titled, Family Loan Forgiveness Agreement. My name was already typed on the signature line. "Just sign it," Ryan said. "It's not like Grandma wanted this to tear us apart." The room went quiet in the way rooms do when everyone knows someone has finally said the cruel part too plainly. I looked at the paper, then I looked at Ryan, then I looked at my parents, who had spent 32 years teaching me that love meant being reasonable whenever my brother needed saving. What they did not know was that I had the bank records, the trust ledger, the wire transfer confirmation, the gym's loan application, 3 emails from my father, and 1 recorded voicemail where my mother admitted exactly what they had done. I did not raise my voice. I did not touch the agreement. I placed my own folder on the table and turned it so the label faced them. Certified Trust Accounting Request. Ryan's smile stayed on his face for 1 second too long. This is that story. And before I take you back to how my inheritance disappeared into a failing gym with black rubber floors and a smoothie bar that never opened, tell me where you are watching from and what time it is there. If you have ever been the quiet daughter, the responsible sister, the one everyone expected to forgive because your pain was easier to manage than someone else's mistakes, I think you will understand this story. And if stories about women who were underestimated, betrayed, and finally let the proof speak mean something to you, subscribe to Ultimate Revenge. But before I tell you what happened in that room, I need to take you back to the beginning. I grew up in Layton Falls, Ohio, in a white 2-story house with navy shutters, a brick walkway, and a maple tree that dropped orange leaves into the gutters every October. From the outside, we looked like a family people trusted. My father, Paul Davenport, owned a small insurance office downtown. My mother, Marlene, organized church luncheons and knew the birthdays of every neighbor within 3 streets. My brother, Ryan, was 2 years older than me and had the kind of charm that made adults forgive him before he apologized. I was the careful one. That was the word they used when they wanted to make my obedience sound like a personality. Chelsea is careful. Chelsea is practical. Chelsea knows how to wait. Ryan was ambitious. Ryan was energetic. Ryan had vision. When he forgot to return borrowed money, he was under pressure. When he missed family obligations, he was building his future. When he shouted, he was passionate. When I objected, I was sensitive. My grandmother, Evelyn Davenport, saw the difference before I had words for it. She lived in a yellow house on Briar Lane with a screened porch, 2 rocking chairs, and a kitchen that always smelled faintly of cinnamon even when nothing was baking. She was my father's mother, but she never played the same games he did. She had sharp blue eyes, soft white hair, and a small brass key she wore on a chain around her neck. That key opened the narrow oak recipe box on her kitchen shelf. She kept actual recipes in it, but she also kept things that mattered to her. Old photographs. A pressed violet from her wedding bouquet. A note my grandfather wrote before his first surgery. A receipt from the day she bought her house after working 23 years as a school secretary. When I was 17, she tapped that recipe box with one finger and said, "Chelsea, paper remembers what people try to soften." I laughed because I thought she meant recipes. She did not laugh with me. She said, "Keep your records," especially when someone tells you not to. Grandma Evelyn was not wealthy in a flashy way. She drove a beige Buick until the driver's seat cracked. She clipped coupons and mended pillowcases. But she had bought her house outright after Grandpa died, invested steadily, and saved with a discipline that made my father uncomfortable. He used to say, "Mom, you cannot take it with you," and she would say, "No, but I can decide who does." When she got sick, I was 28. It started with little things. She forgot that she had already salted soup. She misplaced the brass key and cried because she thought someone had taken it. Then came the diagnosis, the pill organizer, the doctor's appointments, and the legal meetings that my father said were too stressful for me to attend. "She already has things arranged," he told me one Sunday after church. "No need to upset her with details." I believed him because I wanted to. That is one of the hardest things to admit. I wanted my father to be the kind of man who protected his mother's wishes. I wanted my mother to be the kind of woman who would tell the truth, even if it cost her comfort. I wanted my brother to eventually grow into the version of himself everyone kept promising was almost here. I kept mistaking being included for being valued. There is a difference, but I did not know it then. Grandma Evelyn died on a rainy Thursday in November. The funeral home smelled like lilies and damp wool coats. Ryan arrived late with sunglasses pushed into his hair and whispered to my cousin that he had been on a business call. He did not own a business yet. He had an idea for one. After the service, my father handed me a small envelope. Inside was the brass key from Grandma's neck and a handwritten note. "For Chelsea. She will know what to keep." My mother looked at the key and pressed her lips together. "She always did have favorites," Ryan said, smiling like he was joking. I held the key in my palm and closed my fingers around it. It left a half-moon mark in my skin. A month later, my father told me Grandma's estate was tied up. He said there were taxes, old medical bills, legal delays, and some account transfers that had to settle. "These things take time," he said. I was grieving and working full-time as a project coordinator for a medical supply company. I had rent, student loans, and a used Honda that made a clicking sound when I turned left. I was not waiting for Grandma's money like a prize. But she had told me once, while I helped her fold sheets, "I am leaving you enough to breathe." I remembered the way she said breathe. Not buy, not brag, breathe. So I waited. Ryan, meanwhile, started talking about Davenport strength. He wanted to open a boutique fitness gym with personal training, recovery rooms, a juice counter, branded apparel, and, quote, community-driven wellness programming. He said phrases like that at dinner, while my father nodded like Ryan was discussing a medical breakthrough. My mother called it his calling. Ryan had no business degree, no savings, no lease experience, and a habit of quitting jobs when managers expected him to arrive on time. But he had charm, broad shoulders, and a logo designed by a woman he was dating. The first time he showed us the logo, he placed the mock-up in the middle of my parents' dining table. Davenport Strength. The D was shaped like a flexed arm. My father said, "That is a brand." My mother said, "Your grandmother would be so proud." I looked at the paper and said, "Does he have financing?" Ryan looked at me the way people look at a smoke alarm that chirps during dinner. "I have investors," he said. My father cut his steak and said, "Your sister worries. That is what she does." Everyone laughed gently, as if I had performed my assigned role. Over the next year, Davenport strength became the family religion. My parents talked about it constantly. My father introduced Ryan to clients. My mother posted construction photos online. They painted exposed brick, installed mirrors, ordered black rubber flooring, and bought equipment with names I did not know. When I asked, once, whether Grandma's estate had settled, my father sighed. "Chelsea, not everything has to be about your timing." "My timing?" I asked. "She just means," my mother said quickly, "that Ryan's launch has all of us stretched thin right now." I remember looking at her across the kitchen island. She was wiping a clean counter with a blue cloth, because she did not want to look at me. I said, "What does Ryan's launch have to do with Grandma's estate?" My father's face changed for less than a second. Then he smiled. "Nothing. I am just saying there is a lot going on." That was the first thread. I did not pull it yet. The gym opened on the first Saturday in May with balloons at the entrance, a local photographer, and a ribbon cutting where Ryan stood between my parents like a mayor. He wore a black polo with the logo stitched over his heart. My father had tears in his eyes. "This is what family can do when they support each other," he said to the crowd. I was there. I brought flowers because my mother asked me to. I stood near the smoothie counter, which did not have plumbing finished yet, and clapped when Ryan cut the ribbon. When he hugged me, he said into my ear, "See? Some people take risks." I stepped back and said, "Congratulations." That was all. For about 6 months, the gym looked successful online. There were photos of Ryan with clients, Ryan in front of kettlebells, Ryan holding protein shakes, Ryan smiling under motivational quotes painted on the wall. My mother shared every post. My father bought 5 annual memberships for employees who never used them. Then the little sign started. The front desk girl quit. The morning classes disappeared. The juice counter became a storage shelf. Ryan stopped posting member transformations and started posting vague quotes about loyalty. At Thanksgiving, he snapped at me when I asked how many members he had. "Why do you always want numbers?" he said. "Because numbers are usually how businesses work." My mother set down the gravy boat harder than necessary. "Chelsea," she said, "this is a holiday." Ryan pointed his fork at me. "You know, some people build things, and some people sit around waiting for checks from dead relatives." The room went still. My cousin Natalie looked down at her plate. My father cleared his throat. My mother whispered, "Ryan." I waited for someone to say that was cruel. No one did. I folded my napkin once and placed it beside my plate. "That was unnecessary," I said. Ryan laughed. "Truth usually is." I did not leave. I finished dinner. I helped wash dishes. I drove home in light snow, with my hands steady on the wheel. That was the night I took Grandma's brass key out of my jewelry dish and opened the oak recipe box I had brought home after the funeral. Inside, beneath recipe cards for molasses cookies and chicken pot pie, was a sealed envelope I had never opened because grief had made me careful with her things. "Chelsea," it said. My hands went cold. Inside was a copy of a trust summary dated 8 months before Grandma died. It listed several accounts, the house, and specific distributions. To Chelsea Ann Davenport, $186,000 from the Evelyn Davenport Living Trust, to be distributed within 90 days of my passing. 90 days. Grandma had been dead almost a year. I sat at my small kitchen table with the envelope in front of me and the microwave clock blinking, because the power had gone out earlier that week. I read the page 3 times. Then I read it again. The next morning I called my father. He answered on the 4th ring. "Hey, sweetheart." I said, "Dad, I found Grandma's trust summary." Silence. Not long, maybe 3 seconds. But it had weight. He said, "Where did you get that?" "She left it for me." Another pause. Then his voice softened in that way that used to make me feel guilty. "Chelsea, those documents can be confusing. It says I was supposed to receive $186,000 within 90 days. He exhaled. "That was the intention, yes." "The intention?" Things became complicated. What things? He did not answer right away. I heard a chair creak. Then he said, "We will discuss it as a family." I said, "No, I am asking you now." His voice hardened. "Do not take that tone with me." I looked at Grandma's note on the table. Paper remembers. I said, "Where is the money?" He hung up. That was the moment I stopped being the daughter who waited and became the woman who documented. By the following Monday, my mother called and asked me to come to dinner. "We need to talk calmly," she said. "About Grandma's trust? About family?" Those were not the same thing. I went anyway, because sometimes you need to hear the lie in person before you know exactly how much proof you need. My parents' house smelled like pot roast and lemon furniture polish. Ryan was already there, sitting at the table with a beer, though my mother had told me it would just be the three of us. I placed my purse beside my chair and kept my coat on. My father began with a speech. He said Grandma had wanted her money to help the family. He said Ryan's gym was an opportunity. He said the funds had been moved temporarily, with every intention of repayment. He said paperwork was delayed because the business needed time. I listened. Then I asked, "Who authorized the transfer?" My mother blinked. Ryan said, "Chelsea, do not start." I looked at my father. "Who authorized it?" Dad rubbed his forehead. "As trustee, I had discretion." "Discretion to give my distribution to Ryan?" "It was a loan," he said. "Did I sign anything?" My mother reached for my hand. I moved my hand into my lap. She whispered, "You would have said no." The honesty of it almost made me dizzy. Ryan leaned forward. "Because you never believed in me." I said, "That was not your money." He laughed. "It was Grandma's money." "No," I said. "After she died, it was trust property designated for me." My father slapped his palm lightly on the table. Not hard. Just enough to remind everyone who usually controlled the room. "You are not an attorney." "No," I said, "but I can read." My mother's eyes filled with tears, but they were not for me. "Your brother was drowning," she said, "and you decided I should be the life raft without telling me." Ryan stood then. His chair scraped against the hardwood. "You always make yourself the victim," he said. "I lost everything. Do you get that? Everything. The gym, my credit, my reputation, and you are whining about money you did not even earn." I looked at him for a long moment. The overhead light hummed. My father's jaw tightened. My mother stared at the salt shaker. I said, "I want the records." Dad said, "No." I nodded once. "Then I will get them another way." I left without eating. My mother called after me from the porch, "Chelsea, please do not embarrass this family." I turned with my car keys in my hand. "You already did?" I did not say it loudly. That made it worse. 3 days later, I hired Mara Kellerman. Her office was on the second floor above a bakery downtown. The hallway smelled like sugar and old carpet. She was in her early 50s, with silver-threaded brown hair and reading glasses on a chain. She had the calm face of someone who had seen polite families commit ugly acts. I brought Grandma's trust summary, the envelope, the brass key, and my notes from dinner. Mara read quietly. Then she asked, "Who are the trustees?" "My father and mother." "Do you have a full copy of the trust?" "No." "Do you have any written communication from them admitting the transfer?" "Not yet." She looked up. "Then we begin with requests, not accusations." Requests. I liked that. Requests sounded clean. Mara sent a formal demand for a copy of the trust, a complete accounting, bank statements, and documentation of any loans made from trust assets. She gave them 10 business days to respond. My father called me 2 hours after the letter arrived. "What have you done?" he asked. "I asked for records." "You hired a lawyer against your parents." "I hired a lawyer for myself." He lowered his voice. "Chelsea, if you continue this, you will damage relationships you cannot repair." I looked out my apartment window at a woman walking a small dog through freezing rain. I said, "Dad, where is the money?" He hung up again. My mother tried a different method. She texted Bible verses, old photos, and messages about Grandma not wanting conflict. Then she left a voicemail at 7:15 on a Wednesday morning. I saved it. Her voice trembled. "Chelsea, your father is beside himself. Ryan is humiliated. I know we should have talked to you first, but we were trying to save your brother's dream. It was only supposed to be for 6 months. Your father said once the gym grew, Ryan would repay the trust before you even noticed. I know that sounds wrong now, but at the time it felt like family helping family. Please do not make this legal." I played that voicemail twice. Then I sent it to Mara. She replied with one sentence. "Keep the original." By the time my parents finally responded, the accounting was incomplete. It listed a, quote, temporary family loan of $186,000 to Davenport Strength, LLC. There was no signed promissory note from me, no beneficiary consent, no repayment schedule that had been followed, no collateral, no trustee meeting minutes, no independent approval, just a wire transfer from the trust account to the gym's business account, dated 5 months after Grandma died. Mara tapped the page with her pen. "This is not good for them." I said, "What happens now?" "Now we ask for the rest." The rest came slowly. A bank statement showed 2 transfers. The first was $150,000 to Davenport Strength. The second was $36,000 to a contractor for gym renovations. Both were described in the memo line as capital support, not loan, support. Then came an email from my father to the bank manager. "Chelsea is aware in principle and supportive of helping Ryan get established. We will formalize family paperwork later." I stared at that sentence until the words stopped looking like words. Chelsea is aware. I had been aware of nothing. Mara requested the gym's records through the LLC's bankruptcy filings after Ryan's creditors began circling. That was when we found the loan application. Ryan had listed the $186,000 as family investment capital, not debt, investment. He had attached a personal financial statement claiming expected inheritance backing from Davenport Family Trust assets. I sat in Mara's office with that paper in my lap and felt something inside me become very still. Mara said, "Are you all right?" I said yes. She watched me. I added, "I am not surprised anymore. That helps." Over the next 2 months, I built a timeline. Grandma died on November 9th. The trust required distribution within 90 days. The first transfer to Ryan's gym happened on March 3rd. The ribbon cutting was May 6th. My father told me the estate was tied up on June 17th. Ryan mocked me about dead relatives at Thanksgiving. My mother admitted they should have talked to me first on January 10th. Mara filed a petition for trust accounting and breach of fiduciary duty in probate court. She also requested mediation before the hearing because judges liked families to be given one chance to stop lying before a courtroom made it expensive. My parents reacted as if I had burned down the house. My mother left messages saying she could not sleep. My father emailed me a list of things they had done for me over the years. Braces, school clothes, half of a used car down payment, childhood groceries, though he did not phrase it that way. Ryan sent one text, "Enjoy being rich and alone." I screenshotted it. Then he sent another, "Grandma would be disgusted." I screenshotted that too. I need to pause here for a second. If you have ever been the person everyone expected to stay quiet because telling the truth would inconvenience the family, then you know how lonely this part feels. It was not about the money alone. It was about all the years they trained me to believe that needing fairness made me selfish. If this is hitting close to home, leave a comment and tell me what moment made you stop explaining yourself. And if you have not already, subscribe to Ultimate Revenge. Sometimes the quietest woman in the family is only quiet because she is collecting receipts. The mediation was scheduled for a Thursday morning in April at Kellerman and Price, Mara's firm. My parents arrived together. My father looked older than I had ever seen him, but not softer. My mother wore her church pearls. Ryan came in last, wearing a black jacket with the Davenport Strength logo still faintly visible where the patch had been removed. Their attorney, Mr. Grayson, was a tall man with a careful voice and expensive shoes. He began by saying everyone wanted healing. Mara said, "My client wants an accounting and restoration of trust assets." Mr. Grayson smiled tightly. "Of course, but we should acknowledge the emotional context." Mara did not smile. "The financial context is documented." My mother flinched at the word documented. We sat around a polished table under recessed lights. A receptionist brought coffee. No one drank it. Mr. Grayson slid the family loan forgiveness agreement toward me. "This proposal allows everyone to move forward," he said. I read the first paragraph. It stated that I acknowledged the funds had been loaned with my implied consent. I looked up. "My implied consent?" My father said. "You knew we supported Ryan." "I knew you attended his ribbon cutting." Ryan muttered, "Same thing in her world." Mara glanced at him, then at his attorney. Mr. Grayson cleared his throat. My mother leaned forward. "Chelsea, sweetheart, please. The gym is gone. The money is gone. Dragging this out will not bring it back." "No," I said, "but it will establish who took it." Her mouth tightened. Dad said, "That is a terrible thing to say about your parents." Mara opened her folder. "Paul, Marlene, before we discuss forgiveness, we need to discuss the March 3rd transfer." Their attorney put up one hand. "We are not admitting wrongdoing." "No one asked you to," Mara said. "The records do." She placed the bank statement on the table. The paper made a soft, sliding sound. Ryan looked away first. Mara continued. "The trust required distribution to Chelsea within 90 days. Instead, funds were transferred to Davenport Strength, LLC, without beneficiary consent." Dad said, "As trustee, I had discretion to manage assets." Mara placed the trust clause beside the bank statement, not to redirect a specific distribution to another beneficiary's business. My mother whispered, "Ryan was not a beneficiary." The room went quiet. That was the first crack. Mara looked at her. "Exactly." Mr. Grayson shifted in his chair. Ryan said, "This is ridiculous. It was family money." I looked at him. "No, Ryan, it was Grandma's trust." He pointed at me. "You did nothing for that money." I said, "Neither did you." His face reddened. My father said, "Enough." Mara placed the loan application on the table. "This is the business loan document where Ryan describes the funds as investment capital." Ryan leaned forward. "That is not what I meant." Mara said, "It is what you signed." Then she placed my father's email beside it. "Chelsea is aware in principle and supportive." I watched my mother read the sentence. Her eyes moved left to right, then stopped. She had not seen that email before. I could tell. She turned to my father. "Paul?" He did not answer. Mara said, "Chelsea was not aware. Chelsea was not supportive. Chelsea did not consent." We also have a voicemail from Marlene acknowledging that Chelsea should have been consulted before the funds were used. My mother's face went pale. "No," she said. My father looked at her sharply. "Marlene." Mara did not play the voicemail immediately. She did not need to. The mention of it changed the room. Ryan leaned back and laughed once, but it came out wrong. "So what?" he said. "You want Mom and Dad charged? Is that the plan? You want to ruin them because my business failed?" I looked at him and remembered every time I had made myself smaller so his disappointment could fill a room. I said, "I want the trust restored." Dad said, "We do not have $186,000. Mara turned one page. Then we discussed remedies. Surcharge against trustees. Removal as trustees. Judgment. Possible referral for fiduciary misconduct. Recovery from assets. Settlement secured by property. My mother gripped her pearl bracelet. Ryan said, "You would put a lien on their house?" Mara said, "If necessary." My father's chair scraped back. "This is obscene," he said. For the first time, his voice shook, not because he was sorry, because the room was no longer his. Mr. Grayson asked for a private caucus. My parents and Ryan went into the smaller conference room with him. Through the frosted glass, I could see shapes moving. My mother sat. My father stood. Ryan paced. Mara poured herself water. "You are doing well," she said. "I do not feel like I am doing anything. You are letting the documents work." That was exactly what Grandma Evelyn would have liked. After 25 minutes, they returned. My mother had been crying. Ryan looked furious. My father looked polished again, which meant he had found a new angle. He sat down and spoke directly to me. "Chelsea, I made a mistake. I trusted that Ryan would repay the money quickly. I should have told you. But this family has already suffered enough. Your grandmother would not want court. She would not want liens. She would not want your mother humiliated." I reached into my bag and took out the brass key. I placed it on the table. My mother stared at it. "Grandma gave me this," I said. "In her recipe box, she left the trust summary she wanted me to know." Dad looked at the key like it had betrayed him. I said, "So do not tell me what she would have wanted while asking me to erase the only thing she made sure I could prove." No one spoke for 11 seconds. The air conditioner clicked on. Mara slid a settlement outline across the table. My parents would restore the full $186,000 with interest through a secured note against their home, payable within 18 months. They would resign as trustees. They would pay my attorney's fees from their personal funds, not trust assets. They would sign a statement acknowledging I had not consented to the transfer. Ryan would sign a separate declaration confirming I had no ownership interest in Davenport Strength and had never agreed to invest. Mr. Grayson read silently. Ryan said, "I am not signing anything that makes me look like a fraud." Mara said, "Then we proceed to court with the loan application." His attorney finally spoke to him, low and sharp. "Ryan?" Ryan's eyes moved around the room, looking for the old exits: charm, anger, guilt, mother's tears. Father's authority. None of them opened. My mother whispered, "Just sign it." He turned on her. "You said she would get over it." There it was, the second crack. My mother closed her eyes. My father said, "Ryan, stop talking." But it was too late. Mara wrote something on her legal pad. I did not smile. I did not need to. The final papers were not signed that day. People like my parents do not surrender in one meeting. They stall with dignity. They request revisions. They use words like clarification and concern. But the direction had changed. 3 weeks later, in probate court, my parents formally resigned as trustees. A professional fiduciary was appointed. The judge, a woman with gray hair and narrow glasses, reviewed the preliminary accounting and asked my father one question. "Mr. Davenport, where in the trust does it authorize you to transfer a specific beneficiary distribution to a non-beneficiary business without written consent?" My father stood at the lectern, his mouth opened, then closed. The courtroom was small, but it had witnesses. My cousin Natalie was there. My Aunt June was there. 2 of my father's church friends sat in the back, because news travels faster when people pretend not to spread it. My father said, "Your Honor, I believed I was acting in the family's best interest." The judge looked down at the papers. "The trust is not a family feeling, Mr. Davenport. It is a legal instrument." That sentence did more than anything I could have said. My mother began crying quietly into a tissue. Ryan stared at the floor. The judge approved the trustee removal, ordered a full accounting, and set deadlines for repayment settlement. She also noted that failure to comply could lead to further proceedings. Outside the courtroom, my mother touched my sleeve. "Chelsea," she said, "please, can we talk as mother and daughter now?" I looked at her hand on my coat. For most of my life, I would have softened at that sentence. I would have stepped into the role she needed. I would have made her comfortable before asking whether I was safe. I gently moved my sleeve away. "We can talk after the documents are signed." Her face crumpled. "You have become so cold." I thought about Grandma's yellow kitchen, the brass key, the recipe box, and the note that said I would know what to keep. "No," I said, "I have become clearer." The repayment took almost a year. My parents refinanced part of their house. My father sold a parcel of land he had inherited from his uncle. Ryan did not contribute much. He had already moved to Columbus and started working as a sales manager at a supplement company, where I later heard he told people his gym failed because of family legal drama. That sounded like Ryan. My mother sent birthday cards with long messages about forgiveness. My father sent one email that began with, "I hope you are satisfied," and ended with, "Your grandmother would be heartbroken." I did not respond to either. When the final payment cleared, Mara called me at 10:20 on a Tuesday morning. "It is done," she said. I sat at my desk at work with a spreadsheet open in front of me and a cup of coffee gone cold beside my keyboard. For a second, I did not feel triumph. I felt tired. Then I felt air. Not joy exactly. Air. The kind Grandma had meant. Enough to breathe. I used part of the money to pay off my student loans. I put part into savings. I donated to the hospice where Grandma had spent her last week. And I bought one thing for myself. A small oak dining table from an antique shop on Mercer Street. It had scratches on one leg and a water ring near the edge. I liked that. Perfect things make people nervous. The first night I ate dinner at that table, I placed Grandma's brass key in the center, beside a bowl of soup and a folded napkin. I opened the oak recipe box and took out her molasses cookie card. Her handwriting leaned to the right. She had written extra ginger in the margin. I made the cookies badly. They came out too dark around the edges. I ate two anyway. People think revenge is loud. It is not. Sometimes revenge is a bank statement. Sometimes it is a voicemail saved before someone can deny their own voice. Sometimes it is a judge reading one clause. While the people who called you selfish finally understand that love does not give them permission to steal from you, my parents wanted forgiveness to mean forgetting. They wanted family to mean silence. They wanted my inheritance to become a failed gym, my grief to become their excuse, and my grandmother's wishes to become something negotiable over pot roast. But paper remembered. The key remembered. And eventually, so did I. So tell me, if your family took what was legally yours and called it love, would you forgive the loan, or would you let the records speak? Thank you for staying with me through this one. Stories like this are not really about inheritance, gyms, or courtrooms. They are about the moment a woman finally believes the evidence of her own life more than the guilt other people keep handing her. If that means something to you, subscribe to Ultimate Revenge. There are more quiet women, more locked folders, and more truths waiting for the right room.